There's something different about you. You've felt it for as long as you can remember. Maybe you don't have the words for it, but deep inside, you've always known. You are not like everyone else. No matter how much you try to blend in, something about you always stands out. People treat you differently. Some admire you, some resent you, and others can't even explain why they feel uneasy around you. But you can feel it, can't you? Like there's something about you that makes certain people uncomfortable. Almost as if they can sense something they don't understand. And the truth is, they can. Because the chosen ones carry something within them. Something that is not seen with the eyes, but felt with the spirit. The world will tell you it's just your imagination, that you're overthinking it, that you need to change, to tone yourself down, to be more normal. But let me tell you something they won't. You were never meant to be normal, because you are chosen. But how can you know for sure? There are 7 unmistakable marks that only the chosen ones carry. Some of them are obvious, others are hidden, but all of them reveal who you really are. And the last mark? It's the one almost no one talks about. But before we get there, let's start with the first. And once you hear this, you might finally understand why your life has been the way it is. Have you ever noticed that certain people can't stand being around you? You walk into a room, and suddenly, the energy shifts. Some people become quiet. Others seem irritated for no reason. Maybe you've had friends who suddenly turned on you, spreading lies, twisting your words, trying to discredit you. Or maybe you've had family members who always seem to be against you, even when you've done nothing wrong. At first, you might have wondered, what did I do? Why does this keep happening? But the truth is, it was never about you. It was about what you carry. The chosen ones carry a light that is invisible to the eye but undeniable to the spirit. And that light, it exposes things. It exposes falsehood. It exposes jealousy. It exposes hidden darkness in people's hearts. And some people cannot stand to be exposed. They may not even realize it consciously, but something inside them reacts to your presence. They feel uncomfortable, irritated, even hateful toward you. Not because of anything you've done, simply because of who you are. This is why Jesus was hated. The Pharisees couldn't stand him, not because he attacked them, but because his very presence revealed their hypocrisy. He didn't need to argue with them. He didn't need to accuse them. All he had to do was exist, and that was enough to make them furious. Does this sound familiar? Have you ever had someone start treating you like an enemy, even though you've done nothing wrong? Have you ever been in situations where people just seem to dislike you, but they can't even explain why? If so, it's not because there's something wrong with you. It's because there's something different about you. And that difference is a sign, a mark that you are chosen. And if this is true for you, then what comes next is going to confirm even more about who you really are. Because not only do you carry something that others react to, you also see things others don't. Have you ever known something before it happened? Maybe you've had a gut feeling that a situation wasn't right, long before anyone else noticed. Or maybe you sensed a person's true nature, even though they hadn't shown their real intentions yet. And later, you were proven right. This is not just instinct, it is discernment. The chosen ones have a heightened awareness, a spiritual perception that goes beyond the natural. They don't just see what's in front of them, they sense what's underneath. They can walk into a room and feel the energy shift. They can hear someone speak and know if they're being deceptive. They can sense danger before it arrives. They can even feel when something big is about to happen, before there's any physical evidence of it. This is why the chosen ones are often misunderstood. When Joseph had dreams about his future, his own brothers despised him. They mocked him, hated him, betrayed him, all because he could see something they couldn't. How many times has this happened to you? How many times have you tried to warn someone about something, only for them to dismiss you, only for them to realize later that you were right all along. This is the burden of the chosen ones. They see before others see. They know before others know. And because of that, they are often ridiculed, labeled as paranoid, called dramatic, made to feel like they're the problem. But in reality, they were simply ahead of everyone else. This is why the world walks in darkness, but the chosen ones walk in light. Because where others are blind, the chosen ones can see. But this gift of discernment also comes with something else. Something that many chosen ones struggle with their entire lives. Because when you carry this mark, when you can see things that others can't, you will also draw conflict, even when you don't want to. Have you ever noticed that trouble seems to follow you, even when you try to avoid it? It's not that you seek out conflict. You don't start fights. You don't try to provoke anyone. And yet, somehow, people seem to challenge you. People seem to misunderstand you. People seem to react to you as if you're the problem. Why? Because the truth disturbs those who live in lies. And when you carry truth inside you, some people will see you as a threat, even if you don't say a word. Daniel was thrown into the lion's den not because he did anything wrong, but because his very existence was a problem for corrupt people. He wasn't trying to fight them. He wasn't attacking them. He was simply living in truth. And that was enough to make them want to destroy him. The same is true for you. Some people in your life may resent you without knowing why. Some may try to discredit you just because your presence challenges their false reality. But understand this, it is not about you, it's about what you carry. And the worst thing you can do is shrink yourself down to make others comfortable, because you were not meant to fit in. You were meant to stand apart. And the more you try to please the world, the more you will lose what makes you different. So stop trying to silence yourself. Stop trying to make others comfortable. You were chosen for a reason. And that reason is bigger than you can imagine. You've always felt it. No matter where you go, no matter who you're with, there's a part of you that never quite fits. You can be in a room full of people, laughing, talking, even surrounded by so-called friends. And yet, deep inside, there's this quiet voice that whispers, "You don't belong here." It's not loneliness. It's not insecurity. It's something else. Something deeper. Something you've tried to ignore, explain away, or even suppress. But no matter how much you try to blend in, to be normal, to do what everyone else does, you can't. Because you were never meant to. The chosen ones don't fit in. Not because there's something wrong with them, but because their spirit doesn't belong to this world. The truth is, you've spent most of your life searching for the right place, the right group of people, the right environment where you finally feel like you belong. But no matter where you go, that feeling of being an outsider never truly goes away. Why? Because the world is not your home. Philippians 3:20 says, "But our citizenship is in heaven." That means no matter where you go in this world, no matter what you try to fill the emptiness with, there will always be something missing. Because the only place you will ever feel complete is with the one who created you. Look at Moses. He was raised as a prince of Egypt. He had everything: power, wealth, status, luxury. If there was ever a place where someone should have felt like they belonged, it was in Pharaoh's palace. And yet, Moses never felt at home there. Something inside of him knew he was meant for more. And because of that, he walked away from everything: power, riches, even his identity as an Egyptian prince. He chose to be an outsider, because deep down, he knew that being chosen was greater than being comfortable. The same is true for you. The reason you've never fully fit in is because God has been setting you apart from the beginning. It wasn't rejection. It was protection. You weren't supposed to fit into those crowds. You weren't supposed to settle into that environment. You weren't supposed to blend in with the world. Because you were meant to stand out. But here's the thing, this feeling of being different, it isn't just something that affects how people treat you. It affects how other beings respond to you too. Because when you carry the mark of the chosen ones, even those who can't speak can sense it. Have you ever noticed that children or animals react to you in a way that's different from everyone else? Maybe a baby will stare at you for a long time, almost as if they're studying you. Or maybe they'll suddenly smile at you, as if they recognize something special. Maybe an animal that usually avoids strangers will walk straight up to you, with no hesitation, as if they trust you completely. You may have brushed it off as coincidence. But let me tell you something. It's not a coincidence, it's a sign. Because children and animals don't operate like adults do. They don't judge based on appearance. They don't filter their emotions. They don't pretend. They simply feel. And what they feel is what you carry. Jesus himself said, "Let the little children come to me," because children, in their innocence, are drawn to what is pure and holy. And the chosen ones? They carry something from God that the innocent can recognize, even if they don't understand it. It's the same with animals. Throughout history, animals have had a mysterious ability to sense things before humans do. Danger, death, deception, even spiritual forces. In the book of Numbers, Balaam's donkey saw the angel of the Lord before Balaam did. The donkey refused to move forward because it could sense what was unseen. And today, animals still operate in that same awareness. So when an animal approaches you with complete trust, or when a baby locks eyes with you as if they recognize you, understand this. They are responding to something inside of you, something they can sense, even if they can't explain it. Something that sets you apart from the rest. And that is not something you can fake. That is a mark. A sign that your presence carries something divine. But the question is, why? Why do you carry this? Why have you been set apart? And how does it all connect? The answer is simple, because the chosen ones are guided, even when they don't realize it. Have you ever had something happen in your life that felt too perfect to be a coincidence? Maybe you saw a repeating number everywhere you went, or a phrase kept appearing in different places, or you had a dream that later came true. At first, you dismissed it. It's just chance, just random events. But then it kept happening, and happening. And suddenly you started to wonder, is something trying to tell me something? Let me tell you something most people don't understand. The chosen ones are never lost, because they are always being guided. Since the beginning of time, God has used dreams, signs, and symbols to speak to those he has chosen. Joseph received dreams that revealed the future. Daniel had visions that changed the course of history. The wise men in Matthew 2 followed a star that led them straight to Jesus. And today, God still speaks through signs, through dreams, through repeating messages that appear when you need them most. The problem is, most people ignore them. They write them off as coincidence. They brush them aside. And because of that, they miss what God is trying to show them. But the chosen ones, they know better. They pay attention, because they understand that God doesn't always speak with a loud voice. Sometimes, he speaks in the smallest details. A closed door that protected you from something you didn't see. An unexpected delay that kept you from being in the wrong place at the wrong time. A Bible verse that appears at the exact moment you need to hear it. None of it is random. It's divine guidance. And the chosen ones, they follow it. Because they understand that when God sends a sign, it's never meaningless. It's a message, a warning, a calling. But the question is, will you recognize it when it comes? Or will you ignore it, like so many others? Because the truth is, if you've been noticing strange signs in your life, if you've been feeling like God is trying to show you something, then maybe it's time to listen. Have you ever had something happen that felt too perfect to be a coincidence? Maybe you were thinking about someone you hadn't spoken to in years, and suddenly they called you. Maybe you opened a book or scrolled through your phone and found the exact message you needed at the exact moment you needed it. Maybe you kept seeing the same number over and over again on clocks, license plates, receipts, until it almost felt like it was following you. And then there are the dreams. The ones that feel too real to ignore. The ones that show you something before it happens. The ones that leave you waking up with a feeling you can't explain, but you just know. It meant something. Most people brush these moments off. They tell themselves it's just random chance, just their imagination, just their mind playing tricks on them. But for the chosen ones, it's never just a coincidence. Because when you are chosen, you are not walking through life blindly. You are being guided. God doesn't leave his chosen ones wandering aimlessly. He places signs along the way, clues, whispers, patterns, messages meant to lead them in the right direction. The problem? Most people aren't paying attention. They're too distracted, too caught up in their routines, too busy looking at their phones, their problems, their doubts, that they miss the signs completely. But if you've been noticing them, if you've been feeling like the universe, or fate, or something greater is trying to tell you something, then this is your confirmation. You are not crazy. You are not imagining things. You are being called. Throughout history, God has spoken through signs. He sent a star to guide the wise men to Jesus. He spoke to Joseph through dreams that revealed the future. He gave visions to Daniel that changed the course of nations. And he hasn't stopped speaking. He still sends messages. He still gives dreams. He still places signs along your path. The question is, are you listening? Or are you still ignoring what's right in front of you? Most people miss their calling not because they weren't chosen, but because they weren't paying attention when God spoke. They brushed off the warnings. They ignored the signs. They stayed where they were comfortable instead of stepping into the unknown. But the chosen ones, they see, they pay attention, and because of that, they are never lost. If you've been receiving signs, if God has been nudging you, whispering to you, showing you things over and over again, don't ignore it, because when God calls, it's always for a reason. And what happens next will depend on one thing. Will you listen? Some people pray and nothing happens. They say the words, they ask for things, but their prayers feel empty, like throwing a wish into the wind and hoping something sticks. But then, there are others. People who pray and the atmosphere shifts. People who pray and suddenly, things start moving. Doors open, chains break, miracles happen. Not because they're special, not because they're better than anyone else, but because they have something that most people don't. They have access. They are connected to something greater. And when they speak, heaven listens. Elijah prayed, and the rain stopped for 3 years. Then he prayed again, and it returned. Peter prayed, and a man who had been paralyzed his whole life stood up and walked. Paul and Silas were locked in prison, beaten, chained, trapped with no way out. But they prayed, and when they did, the ground shook, the doors opened, the chains fell off. Because the chosen ones don't just say words when they pray, they declare, they command. They align themselves with God's will, and when that happens, the impossible becomes possible. Have you ever prayed and felt something shift? Have you ever spoken something out loud and then watched it happen? Have you ever cried out to God, and suddenly everything changed? That's not luck. That's not chance. That's a mark. A sign that when you pray, something in the spiritual realm responds. Most people don't realize this. But prayer is not just about asking for things. It's about authority. When a chosen one prays, they are not begging. They are activating something. When they speak, their words carry weight. They don't just whisper requests into the air. They send out commands that shift realities. And the greatest secret of all? You don't need long, complicated prayers for them to work. You don't need fancy words. You don't need to sound impressive. Jesus himself said that the power of prayer isn't in the length of the words, but in the faith behind them. A single whisper, spoken in faith, is more powerful than 1,000 words spoken in doubt. If you've ever prayed and felt something stir inside of you, if you've ever cried out to God and felt His presence rush in like a flood, then you already know. You already understand. Your prayers are not just words, they are weapons. And when you use them, things move, things change, things break open. Because when a chosen one prays, the spiritual realm listens. And once you understand that, once you truly believe it, there is nothing, absolutely nothing that can stand in your way. There's something no one tells you about being chosen. Everyone talks about the signs, the gifts, the calling. But what they don't tell you, what almost no one is willing to admit, is the weight that comes with it. Because being chosen is not just about having special abilities. It's not just about standing out. It's about carrying something heavy, something most people could never understand. Maybe you felt it. That deep, unshakable sense that you are meant for something greater, that your life is not random, that there is something you're supposed to do, even if you don't know what it is yet. Some days it excites you, but other days it feels like a burden. Because when you are chosen, life is not easy. You face trials others don't. You experience loneliness others never will. You go through storms that break other people, and yet somehow you're expected to keep going. And sometimes you wonder, why me? Why does it have to be this hard? But here's the truth. The weight you carry is not a punishment. It is proof. Proof that you have been set apart for something greater. Proof that you are not meant to live an ordinary life. Because those who are called to extraordinary things must go through extraordinary trials. Look at every chosen one in history. Moses had to walk away from everything he knew. Joseph was betrayed, thrown into a pit, and sold into slavery. David was hunted, falsely accused, and forced to hide in caves before he became king. Even Jesus, the ultimate chosen one, felt the weight of his calling so intensely that he sweat blood in the Garden of Gethsemane. And yet they all endured. Because they knew something most people don't. They knew that the weight wasn't meant to break them. It was meant to prepare them. And the same is true for you. Every hardship, every betrayal, every time you were isolated, misunderstood, or pushed away, none of it was for nothing. It was shaping you, strengthening you, refining you. Because God doesn't just call the chosen ones, He prepares them. And that preparation, it is not comfortable. It will break down every weak part of you. It will test your patience, your faith, your endurance. But when it is finished, you will emerge stronger than you ever thought possible. Because the weight you carry today is proof of the destiny you are being prepared for. But here's the most important part. It's not enough to just know that you are chosen, because knowing means nothing if you don't act on it. The real question is, what are you going to do about it? You've made it this far. You've heard the signs, the struggles, the proof that you are not like everyone else. And now, you have a choice. You can walk away from this, go back to your life, and pretend none of this matters. You can ignore the calling, drown out the voice inside of you, and try to fit into a world you were never meant to belong to. Or you can step into your purpose, because now, you know. You know why you've always felt different. You know why your life has never followed the same path as everyone else's. You know why you've faced battles that most people couldn't survive. And now that you know, the only question left is, what are you going to do with it? Because being chosen is not a title. It's a responsibility. It means you are here for a reason. It means your life is not meant to be wasted. It means you have a mission, even if you don't fully understand what it is yet. So the time for waiting is over. The time for doubting is done. Because if you have made it this far, then you already have your answer. You are chosen. You always have been. And now, it's time to act like it. Step into your calling. Embrace the weight you carry, and never ever shrink back into the shadows again. Because the world doesn't need more people who fit in. It needs more people who are willing to stand out. And that is what you were born to do.